I still remember the exact sound my phone made when it happened. One stupid little vibration. I almost ignored it. I've been lying on my bed after a brutal Thursday, pretending I was studying for my economics midterm while actually scrolling through a dating app for the hundredth time that week. My attention span was completely gone. Finals were creeping closer. I was surviving on coffee and microwave noodles, and my university apartment felt unusually quiet. Cole wasn't home yet. He texted earlier saying basketball practice had run late. I figured I'd have the place to myself for another hour, so I kept swiping left, left, right, left again. Most of the profiles blurred together after a while. Gym selfies, shirtless beach photos, bios that said absolutely nothing except just ask. Then another profile appeared. I froze. The picture looked familiar, not because I'd seen it on the app before, because I'd seen the guy brushing his teeth every morning. I blinked. No way. I looked closer. The profile showed a photo I'd never seen before. Cole stood on a hiking trail somewhere wearing a dark green hoodie with sunlight filtering through the trees behind him. He wasn't smiling the way he usually did around other people. This smile looked quieter, more genuine. His name, his age, his major, everything matched except one tiny detail. His profile settings were set to men. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. Cole, my roommate. The same Cole who spent 2 semesters talking about pickup basketball, complaining about professors, and casually mentioning girls from his classes. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. There had to be some explanation. Maybe it was an old joke. Maybe one of his teammates made the account. Maybe. Before I could think any further, my thumb twitched. Right? The screen flashed. It's a match. I stopped breathing. The app exploded with bright colors and stupid little animations while my brain completely shut down. No, 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 no. This wasn't possible. That meant he had already liked me. I sat bolt upright on my bed. What the hell? For almost a minute, I simply stared at my phone. Cole had liked me before I liked him, which meant he'd seen my profile first. My actual profile. The one with my face, my name, everything. A loud slam echoed from outside the apartment door. Cole was home. I nearly dropped my phone. "Dude," his voice called from the hallway. "You alive?" I locked my screen so fast it almost flew out of my hand. "Yeah," my voice cracked. "Fantastic. You sound weird." "I'm studying you," he laughed. "Now I know something's wrong." His footsteps grew closer. Every instinct screamed at me to hide the phone under my pillow. Instead, I tossed it onto the desk just as Cole leaned against my bedroom doorframe. "There you are." He looked exactly like he always did after practice. Gray university hoodie, basketball shorts, hair damp from the shower at the gym, a backpack hanging off one shoulder. Completely normal, completely impossible. Because now every time I looked at him, all I could think was, he swiped right on me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." "You sure?" "Long day." He nodded slowly. "Same." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then something strange happened. Cole looked at me, really looked at me. Not the casual glance roommates exchange every day. Long enough that I suddenly became aware of my heartbeat. Then he smiled. "You want to order pizza?" My brain struggled to function. "Sure, cool." He hesitated, almost like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he nodded once and walked toward the kitchen. I waited until I heard the refrigerator open before grabbing my phone again. The match was still there, 100% real. No mistake, no glitch. Cole, my roommate, matched with me. I opened our conversation. Empty. Beckett of us had sent a message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. What was I even supposed to write? "Hey, funny seeing you here." Absolutely not. "So, does this mean you're gay?" Even worse, I locked the phone again. Dinner was painfully awkward, at least for me. Cole acted almost completely normal. Almost. Every now and then I'd catch him looking at me before quickly focusing back on the TV. Normally, we'd joke through dinner. Tonight, there were these strange little silences. So he finally said, "So you've been on your phone a lot?" "I have." "Mm-hmm. I've just been," I couldn't exactly say, "thinking about accidentally matching with you. Answering messages." He nodded. "Right." Then another silence. It should have felt uncomfortable. Instead, it felt charged, like both of us were dancing around something neither of us knew how to bring up. Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The app remained unopened. The match remained unread. Part of me wanted to pretend none of it had happened. The other part couldn't stop wondering why Cole had liked me in the first place. Had he recognized me before swiping or after we'd? Was it an accident or was it completely intentional? I had no idea. But I did know one thing. Tomorrow morning I'd have to look my university roommate in the eyes and somehow act like I hadn't just discovered the biggest secret either of us had ever kept. The next morning I woke up determined to act normal. That plan lasted about 30 seconds. I walked into the kitchen wearing sweatpants and an old university hoodie, still half asleep, only to find Cole already making coffee. "Morning," he said. "Morning," he glanced at me. I glanced at him. Then somehow we both looked away at exactly the same time. "Great," so he said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "You have Professor Miller today?" "Yeah, 8:30. He still gives those surprise quizzes." Unfortunately, he handed me one of the mugs. Normally, I'd bump his shoulder and thank him. Instead, I took it carefully, making sure our hands didn't touch. Cole noticed. I could tell. His smile faded just a little. "You okay?" "Yeah. You've asked me that twice since yesterday." "Because you've been acting weird since yesterday." I forced a laugh. Stress. He studied my face for another second before nodding. "If you say so." The walk to campus felt longer than usual. Since we lived off campus, we usually walked together every morning. It had become part of our routine without either of us planning it. Cole talked about basketball practice. I nodded at the right moments. My brain, meanwhile, was completely occupied by one question. Did he know? Had he recognized my profile before swiping, or had he only realized after we matched? The uncertainty was driving me insane. By lunchtime, I'd barely absorbed a single word from my lectures. I finally gave in. Sitting alone outside the student library, I opened the dating app. One unread message from Cole. My stomach flipped. I tapped it. Cole. Well, this is probably the weirdest way we've ever talked. I couldn't help smiling. It sounded exactly like him. Funny, awkward. Trying to make things less uncomfortable, I stared at the keyboard for nearly 2 minutes before typing. Me. I honestly thought your profile was fake. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. He'd been online. Cole. I thought yours was fake too until I recognized your dog in one of your pictures. I laughed out loud. My golden retriever had somehow become the proof of my identity. Me? So you knew it was me? The typing bubble appeared, stopped, appeared again, finally before I swiped. I read the message 3 times before, not after, before, which meant he had intentionally liked me. My pulse started racing. Another message arrived before I could answer. You don't have to reply if this makes things awkward. Then another. I don't want to ruin living together. That sentence hit me harder than I expected because it sounded nervous. Cole was nervous. The confident guy who could walk into a room full of strangers and make friends in 5 minutes was worried about what I thought. I took a deep breath. Me. Can I ask you something? Almost instantly. Yeah, why did you swipe right? This time the typing bubble stayed for a long time. Long enough that I wondered if he'd changed his mind. Finally, because I wanted to. That wasn't an answer. That's not fair. A laughing emoji appeared. Because I think you're cute. I nearly dropped my phone. Cute. Cole thought I was cute. I rubbed both hands over my face. What was happening? My phone buzzed again. Your turn. I smiled despite myself. Same reason. No response. 5 seconds. 10. Then seriously, nothing. Then another message. Ronan. I waited. Why have we been pretending for 8 months? I leaned back against the bench. That question had about 100 possible answers. Because I assumed you were straight. Because I didn't want to lose our friendship. Because you're my roommate. Because I was scared. Instead, I wrote, I thought you liked girls. His reply came immediately. I do. I frowned. Another message arrived. Guys, too. Oh, that explained quite a lot. A memory surfaced. Freshman orientation. Cole casually mentioning he'd gone on a bad date. He'd never actually said it was with a girl. I had simply assumed. Then there were all the other moments. The comments I'd interpreted one way, the jokes, the lingering eye contact. Had I missed the signs all year? My phone buzzed again. Can we talk tonight? Not over messages in person. I swallowed. Yeah. No running away. No running away. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. I caught myself checking the time every few minutes. When my final lecture ended, I walked home slower than usual, trying to prepare for whatever conversation was waiting. Cole was already there. He looked up from the couch when I opened the apartment door. Hey, hey, Beckett! Of us moved. Finally, he stood. You hungry? I blinked. That's how you're starting this? He laughed nervously. I figured it's easier to have life-changing conversations over tacos. I laughed too. Fair enough. An hour later, we'd finished eating. The takeout containers still sat on the coffee table between us. The television was off. The apartment was unusually quiet. Cole rested his elbows on his knees. So he smiled. This is still weird. A little. You've been my roommate for 8 months. Yep. We've watched movies together. Yep. Went on road trips. Yep. And somehow we both ended up liking each other without saying anything. I nodded slowly. When you put it like that, we're idiots. We really are. For the first time since matching, the tension eased. We both laughed. Cole looked down at his hands before speaking again. I've wanted to tell you for months. My heart skipped. But every time I tried, he continued. I convinced myself I was imagining things. You weren't. I know that now. He looked back up. His expression had changed, more serious. I don't want this to make living together uncomfortable. It won't. You sure? I've had a crush on you since like October. His eyebrows shot up. October? You wore that blue sweater? He burst out laughing. The sweater? I don't know. Okay, it worked. He shook his head, grinning. I've still got that sweater. I know. You know, I may have noticed. He laughed even harder. For a moment, everything felt easy again, natural, like we'd simply skipped months of pretending. Then Cole became quiet. So would it be incredibly cliché if I asked my dating app match to go on an actual date? I looked at him, really looked at him, the guy I'd lived with, studied with, cooked with, laughed with, and apparently liked for far longer than either of us realized. I smiled. I think it'd be pretty cliché. His shoulders slumped dramatically, but he looked up immediately. I'd still say yes. Cole smiled so widely that I couldn't help smiling too. Beckett, one of us, realized it yet, but agreeing to that one simple date was about to change everything between us. I thought agreeing to the date would make things less awkward. Instead, it somehow made everything 10 times worse. Not in a bad way, in a painfully obvious way. The next morning, Cole walked into the kitchen wearing a navy blue t-shirt and jeans, looking exactly like he always did. Except now, I was allowed to think he looked attractive. That turned out to be dangerous. Morning, he said, opening the fridge. Morning, you slept okay? Not really, he laughed. Me neither. There was another one of those silences. Not uncomfortable, just different. Finally, he looked over his shoulder. So our date? I nearly choked on my coffee. You're just going to say it like that? He grinned. I figured we should practice. For what? Saying the word date without one of us looking like we're about to pass out. I think I'm failing. You definitely are. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't stop smiling. Campus felt strangely smaller that day. Everywhere we went, people greeted us. Our classmates already knew we lived together, so nobody thought anything of seeing us walking side by side. Still, every accidental brush of our shoulders suddenly meant something. Every glance lasted a little longer. Every smile felt more personal. You two coming Friday? We turned around. It was Wren from one of Cole's business classes. There'll be a party at Holden's place, she said. Pretty much everyone's going. Cole looked at me. You interested? I don't know. You should come, Wren said. You guys are fun together. Cole laughed. We'll think about it. After she left, I looked at him. What? She said, you guys, like we're attached at the hip. We kind of are, I guess. He bumped my shoulder lightly. I don't mind, Beckett. Did I? That afternoon, we stopped by the grocery store before heading home. Normally, we'd split up to grab different things. This time, we stayed together, mostly because neither of us seemed eager to end the conversation. So, Cole said as we reached the cereal aisle, I feel like you start every sentence with, so now. I'm buying time. For what? He scratched the back of his neck. I've been wondering something. Shoot. When did you first realize you liked me? I smiled. You really want the answer? Yeah. I grabbed a box of cereal off the shelf before answering. The flu. He frowned. What? Remember when I got sick in November? His expression softened immediately. You had a fever for 3 days. You skipped basketball practice to stay home. You would have done the same. I would have, he nodded. So that was it, pretty much. I laughed quietly. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning because someone was checking my temperature. His ears turned slightly pink. You remember that? I pretended to stay asleep. I thought you were. I know. He looked embarrassed. I was worried. I could tell. He stared at the shopping cart for a second. I didn't realize how worried until afterward. Beckett of us spoke for a while. Eventually, he smiled. My turn. Go ahead. Freshman orientation. I blinked. Seriously? You were completely lost. I was. You asked me where Building C was. I remember. You thanked me. And Cole laughed. You smiled. That's it. That's it. You liked me because I smiled. You have a nice smile. I shook my head. That's ridiculous. I know. He pushed the cart forward. Didn't stop it from happening. By the time we got home, the apartment felt different. Not because anything had changed, because everything had. We cooked dinner together like always. Cole chopped vegetables. I handled the pasta. Our routine hadn't changed. Only the little details had. He stood a little closer. Our elbows brushed. Beckett of us moved away. You know, he said quietly, I've been thinking. That's usually dangerous. He laughed. Probably. What about if the app hadn't matched us? I looked over. How long do you think we would have kept pretending? That question lingered between us. Honestly, I don't know. Me neither. I probably would have convinced myself you were straight forever. I probably would have convinced myself you weren't interested. We both laughed at how stupid that sounded now. Cole leaned against the counter. We really wasted a lot of time. Yeah, but I'm glad we found out. I nodded. So am I. Friday arrived faster than either of us expected. Our first date. We'd agreed to keep it simple. No fancy restaurant, no expensive plans, just dinner at a small Italian place a few blocks from campus, followed by a walk through the Riverside Park. Simple, which somehow made me even more nervous. I stood in front of my closet for nearly 15 minutes. What are you wearing? Cole's voice came from the hallway. I don't know. You've changed shirts 3 times. You've been counting. I've heard the hangers. I laughed despite myself. You spying on me? I live here. Fair point. A few seconds later, he knocked gently on my half-open bedroom door. Can I come in? Yeah. He stepped inside and immediately stopped. You look, he smiled, really good. I looked down at myself. It's just a black sweater. Yeah, you've seen it before. I know. So, why are you looking at me like that? He shrugged. Because this is the first time I'm seeing you before taking you on a date. That sentence made my heartbeat speed up again. You don't look too bad yourself. Oh, the blue shirt. The one you like? I never said that. You absolutely did. I said the sweater. You've been caught staring at this shirt. I have not. He raised one eyebrow. Ronan. I sighed dramatically. Fine. He laughed. I knew it. We stood there smiling at each other. Beckett of us seemed eager to leave. Finally, Cole checked his watch. If we don't go now, we'll lose the reservation. Exactly. He reached for the apartment keys. As we stepped into the hallway, he hesitated. Can I ask one more question? Sure. Is it weird that I'm more nervous now than I was before we matched? I smiled. No. You're nervous too? Terrified. He laughed softly. Good. Good. I'd feel weird if I was the only one. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside together. Beckett of us knew that before the night was over, someone from university would see us together, and a single unexpected conversation would force us to decide whether we were ready to stop hiding what had quietly been growing between us. I spent the entire walk to the restaurant trying to convince myself it wasn't actually a date. It didn't work. Cole held the door open for me. After you. I laughed. You're really leaning into this. What, the gentleman act? He shrugged, smiling. My mom would be disappointed if I didn't. Inside, the restaurant was small and cozy, with warm lights hanging from the ceiling and quiet music playing in the background. It wasn't fancy, but it felt comfortable. Exactly the kind of place where people actually talked instead of staring at their phones. Our waiter led us to a table by the window. So, Cole said once we'd ordered, there it is again. What? So he laughed. I can't help it. You definitely can. Nope. I shook my head. I've lived with you for 8 months and somehow never noticed. You were distracted. By what? You tell me. I looked away, smiling into my glass. Fair enough. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation felt surprisingly normal. We talked about classes, our impossible statistics professor, the apartment's broken dishwasher, plans for summer break. It was easy, natural, the same conversations we'd always had. Only now there wasn't a wall between us. Eventually, Cole leaned back in his chair. Can I admit something? Depends. I almost deleted the app. When? The day before we matched. I blinked. Seriously? He nodded. I've been on it for months. No luck? He laughed. A few dates. Worth it? Not really. I smiled. I was about ready to give up. So, what changed? He looked directly at me. You appeared. I felt my face warm. That's cheesy. I know. It still worked. I'm glad. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Comfortable enough that I almost forgot we were surrounded by other people. Then I heard a familiar voice. Cole. Both of us turned. A guy from one of Cole's basketball classes stood a few feet away holding a takeout bag. Holden, Cole said. I thought that was you. Holden looked between us. You guys eating here? Yeah. Nice. His eyes landed on me. Ronan, right? That's me. You two celebrating something? I noticed Cole hesitate. Only for a second, but I noticed. Just grabbing dinner? He answered. Holden smiled. Cool. He gave us a quick wave before heading toward the door. The moment he left, the atmosphere shifted. Cole stared down at the table. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. You don't sound convinced. He sighed quietly. I almost told him my heart skipped. What stopped you? I didn't know if you'd be comfortable. I thought about it. Honestly, I don't know. He nodded slowly. Me neither. Beckett of us had expected the question to come so soon. It wasn't that we wanted to hide. We just hadn't had time to figure out what this was becoming. One step at a time, I suggested. He smiled. One step at a time. After dinner, we walked toward the river that cut through campus. The evening air was cool enough that people were wearing light jackets. Students sat along the grass laughing with friends, while others hurried past carrying backpacks. It was one of those ordinary university nights that somehow felt memorable. I come here when I can't think, Cole said the river. He nodded. My freshman year I looked at the water. I didn't know that. You didn't know a lot of things I've noticed. He laughed softly. I used to sit on that bench. He pointed toward one overlooking the water, usually after practice. What were you thinking about? He smiled to himself. You. I stopped walking. What? I'd wonder if I should tell you. I stared at him. You've got to be kidding. No, Cole. I knew it was a bad idea. Why? You were my roommate. So if you didn't feel the same, he shrugged, I'd still have to see you every day. That was exactly what I'd been afraid of. We'd spent months worrying about the same thing without ever saying it. You know, I said quietly, we're really bad at communication. We're terrible, he laughed. Absolutely terrible. We reached the bench and sat down. For a while, we simply watched the water. Students crossed the nearby bridge while lights reflected across the surface. I've got another confession, I admitted. Oh, I almost moved out. His head turned so quickly I almost laughed. What? Back in December. Why? Because I couldn't stop liking you. His expression changed immediately. You were going to move? I thought it would make things easier, and I couldn't afford another apartment. He let out a relieved laugh. I've never been happier that college rent is ridiculous. I know. He shook his head. We're unbelievable. I think that's been established. A comfortable silence settled between us again. Then Cole spoke. I'm glad you stayed. So am I. On the walk home, our conversation drifted to lighter topics again. Movies, music, vacation plans, anything except feelings. It felt nice, like we'd finally found a rhythm. When we reached our apartment building, Cole unlocked the front door. I had a good time tonight. I did too. He looked at me. I know this sounds weird probably, but it didn't really feel like a first date. I smiled. Because we've already spent months getting to know each other. Exactly, he nodded. It felt like he searched for the words. The next step. I couldn't have described it better. Inside the apartment, we kicked off our shoes like always. The familiar routine felt strangely comforting. Cole started toward his bedroom, then stopped. He turned around. Ronan? Yeah. I've been wondering something all night. What? If we hadn't been roommates? I waited. Do you think we'd still be here? I thought about it. Probably not. We never would have spent enough time together, never would have become friends first, never would have learned each other's little habits, the way he hummed while cooking, the way I always forgot my keys, the way we'd built a life together without realizing it. I smiled. I think becoming roommates was the luckiest accident either of us ever had. Cole smiled back. I was hoping you'd say that. Before either of us could say anything else, both of our phones buzzed at exactly the same time. It was a message in our apartment group chat from the landlord. Quick reminder, maintenance will be inspecting every apartment tomorrow morning between 9 and 11. Please make sure all common areas are accessible. Cole looked from his phone to me. Guess we're cleaning tonight. I laughed. Most romantic ending to a first date ever. He grinned. Welcome back to real life. Beckett of us realized that the ordinary Saturday morning maintenance visit would unexpectedly bring one of our closest university friends to our apartment and put our brand new relationship in a situation neither of us had planned for. Saturday morning arrived far earlier than I wanted. A loud knock echoed through the apartment just after 9 o'clock. I groaned into my pillow. You getting that? Cole called from his room. I got it yesterday. That's not how doors work. It should be another knock. I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled toward the front door. The maintenance guy smiled politely. Morning. Just here for the inspection. No problem. He spent less than 10 minutes checking smoke detectors, looking under the sink, and making sure nothing was leaking. Just as he was leaving, another knock sounded behind him. Cole looked up from the kitchen. You expecting someone? I shook my head. When I opened the door again, I almost laughed. Holden stood there holding 2 paper bags. Morning. The basketball guy? I asked. The one and only. He held up the bags. I brought breakfast. Cole walked over. Holden, you left your headphones in my car. Oh. Cole accepted them. And I figured I'd grab breakfast since I was already out. Come in. A few minutes later, the 3 of us were eating bagels around our tiny kitchen table. The conversation stayed casual. Basketball, classes, weekend plans. I almost forgot about the restaurant the night before. Almost. Holden looked between us, so Cole immediately laughed. What? You guys seem different. Beckett of us answered. I knew it, Holden said, pointing dramatically. Knew what? Something happened. Cole tried to play innocent. What makes you say that? You've smiled at each other like 12 times in 5 minutes. We always smile. No, Holden shook his head. Not like this. Silence. He looked at me, then Cole, then back again. His eyes widened. Wait. Cole exhaled slowly. I was wondering how long it would take. Holden blinked twice. No way. Cole looked toward me. I gave a tiny nod. He smiled. We're seeing where things go. For exactly 3 seconds, Holden simply stared. Then he broke into the biggest grin I'd ever seen. About time, Cole frowned. About time, dude. Holden laughed. I've known something was going on for months. Both of us spoke at once. What? He looked genuinely confused. You seriously thought nobody noticed? I thought we were hiding it. You were hiding it terribly. Cole rubbed his forehead. Please explain. Holden leaned back in his chair. You two already acted like an old married couple. I nearly choked on my coffee. We did not. You absolutely did. He started counting on his fingers. You always waited for each other after class. Cole opened his mouth. Nope. You cooked together almost every night. I looked away. You bought groceries together? Cole. You finished each other's sentences. You went everywhere together. Beckett of us had a response. Holden laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. I honestly thought you were already dating. Cole looked at me. I feel incredibly stupid. So do I. Holden grinned. You should. After Holden left, the apartment became very quiet. Cole leaned against the kitchen counter. So there it is again, he smiled. I guess we weren't exactly subtle. I guess not. I spent 8 months thinking I was hiding a massive secret. Apparently, everyone except us figured it out. We both laughed. The tension we carried for so long suddenly felt unnecessary. You know what's funny? I asked. What? I always thought I was imagining the way you looked at me. I thought the same thing. We're hopeless. We really are. That afternoon, we decided to get out of the apartment. Beckett of us had any homework due until Monday, and after the emotional whirlwind of the last 2 days, we needed fresh air. The University Botanical Garden sat only a 15-minute walk from campus. It was one of our favorite places to relax. We wandered slowly along the winding paths, talking about everything and nothing. Cole pointed toward a small pond. I've never asked. What? When did you know you were gay? I smiled. That's a heavy question. We've earned heavy questions. I thought about it. High school. He nodded. I knew around the same time. You ever tell anyone? My sister. How'd she react? Cole laughed. She told me she'd known for 2 years. I burst out laughing. No, I'm serious. What gave it away? I complimented one actor a little too enthusiastically. I laughed even harder. She still teases me. I can see why. What about you? My older cousin. Supportive. The most supportive person I know. Cole smiled. I'm glad. So am I. For a while we simply walked in silence. The gardens were peaceful, filled with students reading on benches and families enjoying the weekend. Cole suddenly stopped. What? I've been thinking, dangerous. He ignored the comment. I don't want to hide. I looked at him. I'm not saying we need to announce anything, he continued carefully, but he glanced around the gardens. I don't want to spend months pretending we're just roommates if this keeps becoming something more. His words settled quietly between us. Beckett rushed. Beckett dramatic. Just honest. I don't want that either, I admitted. He smiled. Good. We resumed walking. A few minutes later, our hands brushed accidentally. Beckett of us pulled away. Instead, after a hesitant second, Cole quietly intertwined his fingers with mine. The gesture was so natural that it almost surprised me. I looked over. You okay? He looked oddly nervous. I've wanted to do that since dinner. I squeezed his hand gently. I'm glad you did. His smile returned. Beckett of us noticed the elderly couple walking past us, smiling knowingly. Sunday evening arrived before we knew it. We spent most of the day studying at the library. For the first time in forever, concentrating actually felt possible. Around 8 o'clock, we headed back toward the apartment. As we climbed the stairs, Cole stopped outside our door. I've got another confession. I laughed. You've had a lot of those lately. This one's embarrassing. Go on. He reached into his wallet. From behind one of his student ID cards, he pulled out a tiny folded piece of paper. I've been carrying this around for 3 months. What is it? He handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note. Just one sentence. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? Cole said. I stared at it. You wrote this 3 months ago, and I was going to slide it under your bedroom door. I looked up. What stopped you? He smiled sheepishly. I chickened out. I laughed so hard I had to lean against the wall. You idiot. I know. I folded the note again and slipped it into my pocket. I'm keeping this. You are? Definitely. He smiled. I'm kind of glad I never used it. Why? Because accidentally matching with my roommate makes a much better story. I couldn't argue with that. As we unlocked the apartment door, neither of us realized that finals week was about to test our relationship in unexpected ways, and an opportunity neither of us saw coming would force us to decide what came after graduation. If you'd asked me a week earlier what I was most worried about, I would have said finals. Turns out trying to study while secretly dating the person you lived with was a completely different challenge. Cole was impossible to ignore, not because he was distracting on purpose, just because everything felt different now. Monday evening, we spread our books across the kitchen table like we always did. Statistics for me, marketing for him. We are not talking for the next hour, Cole announced. I looked up. Serious? Completely. No distractions. No distractions. I nodded. Deal. Exactly 4 minutes later, he sighed dramatically. I hate statistics. I looked at him. You lasted 4 minutes. I tried. You failed. I failed. I couldn't help laughing. Focus. You first. The library wasn't much better. We found our usual corner on the 3rd floor, surrounded by students who looked just as exhausted as we felt. Cole tapped his pencil against his notebook. I've read the same paragraph 6 times. I've solved the same equation 3 times, so we're both doomed. Looks that way. He leaned back in his chair. You know, if we pass these exams, we graduate in 6 weeks. The words hung between us. Graduation. Somehow, despite everything that had happened over the past few days, neither of us had really talked about what came after university. Cole closed his notebook. We should probably have that conversation. I nodded slowly. We probably should. That evening after we got home, we ordered takeout instead of cooking. Beckett of us had the energy. We sat on the couch with our food balanced on our laps. Cole broke the silence first. I got an email today. What about, a job? I looked over immediately. What? It's just an interview, Cole. He laughed. What? You buried the important part. I didn't want to jinx it. What company? He named a sports marketing firm downtown. I remembered him talking about applying there months ago. They called this morning. When's the interview? Friday. I smiled. That's amazing. I hope so. What about you? I hesitated. I've got one too. His eyebrows shot up. You never told me. I found out yesterday. For the design internship? I nodded. The architecture studio? Yeah. For a second, we simply looked at each other. Then Cole laughed. We're really terrible at sharing important news. I was waiting until after finals. So was I. He shook his head. Unbelievable. Over the next few days, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Study, classes, coffee, late-night review sessions. Somewhere in between all of that, we quietly slipped into being a couple. Nothing dramatic. Cole started waiting outside my classroom instead of texting. I started bringing him coffee before his morning lectures. When one of us had a rough day, the other somehow knew without asking. It felt easy, like we've been building toward this for months. Maybe we had. Thursday night, we took a break from studying and walked across campus. The university looked different after dark. Most classrooms were empty while the library glowed with students desperately preparing for exams. I'll miss this place, I admitted. Cole looked around. Me too. Even the 8 a.m. lectures. Let's not get carried away, I laughed. We wandered toward the old clock tower in the center of campus. Freshmen were taking pictures nearby, probably realizing their first year was almost over. I remember moving into the apartment, Cole said. You had way too many boxes. I still think half of them were books. They were. I knew it. He smiled. I remember opening the front door and wondering if we'd get along. I remember wondering if you'd be loud. I am loud. You are? He grinned. You never complained. I got used to it. We reached the benches beneath the clock tower and sat down. A cool breeze rustled through the trees. Cole looked unusually thoughtful. Can I ask something? Always. If both our interviews go well, I already knew where this was going, what if we end up in different cities? The question settled heavily between us. Beckett of us had considered it seriously. Not because we were avoiding it, because everything had happened so fast. I don't know, I admitted honestly. I don't either. He stared at the ground. I don't want to lose this. My chest tightened. I don't either. He finally looked back to me. But I also don't want either of us giving up opportunities. I smiled softly. That's one of the reasons I like you. What? That you thought about my future before your own? He laughed quietly. I guess we'll figure it out. You really believe that? I do, he nodded. I want to. Friday came, interview day. Cole left first. He stood by the apartment door, adjusting his tie for what felt like the 10th time. You look great. You have to say that. I don't. You don't? No. He smiled nervously. I feel sick. That's normal. What if I completely blank? You won't. What if I stepped forward and interrupted him? Cole. Yeah, you've spent 4 years preparing for this. He took a deep breath. You're right. I know. He laughed. You sound very confident. I'm borrowing confidence for both of us. He smiled. Thanks. Good luck. You too. For a brief moment, he hesitated. Then he wrapped me in a quick hug. I'll text you. I'll be waiting. My interview wasn't until the afternoon. Somehow, it went better than I expected. By the time I walked out of the office building, my phone was buzzing. Cole. Finished me. How did it go? 3 dots appeared. Can I tell you in person? That couldn't be bad. Meet at the apartment. Already heading there. I unlocked our front door 20 minutes later. Cole was standing in the kitchen. The second he saw me, he smiled. So, I asked, you first. It went well. Really? I think so. He laughed. Mine too. Relief washed over both of us at the same time. We had done it. Months of applications, endless preparation, all leading to this. Cole leaned against the counter. There's one more thing. What? They told me where the position would be. I felt my stomach tighten, and he smiled slowly. Here. I blinked. Here in the city. I couldn't stop smiling. My internship's here too. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Cole laughed in disbelief. You've got to be kidding. I wish I were. So we might actually stay here. It looks that way. He shook his head, smiling wider than I'd ever seen. I was preparing myself for a long-distance conversation. Me too. Instead, we stood there laughing in the middle of our tiny apartment kitchen. The apartment where we'd met as strangers, become friends, hidden our feelings, and accidentally matched on a dating app. Only one chapter remained before graduation, and neither of us knew that the final week at university would bring us back to the very place where this whole story had unexpectedly begun. Graduation week arrived before either of us felt ready for it. The campus looked completely different. Families wandered between buildings taking photos. Students wore graduation gowns over jeans and sneakers while trying not to wrinkle them. Everywhere I looked, people were saying goodbye. It felt strange. Only a few months earlier, I've been worried about passing exams. Now I was wondering how 4 years had disappeared so quickly. Cole nudged my shoulder as we crossed the main quad. You thinking too much again? I always think too much. I know, he smiled. That's why I asked. I laughed. You nervous a little? About graduation? No. He looked toward the administration building about everything changing. I understood exactly what he meant. Even though we'd both accepted jobs in the city, university had been our entire world. Soon, we'd no longer be students. We'd have full-time jobs. A broken phone charger. Cole laughed from across the living room. What? I found your first grocery list. My what? He held up a wrinkled receipt. Milk, bread, eggs, coffee. That's embarrassing. It gets better. He flipped it over. Written on the back in my terrible handwriting were the words, Ask roommate if he eats peanut butter. I buried my face in my hands. Oh no. Cole couldn't stop laughing. You didn't know if I liked peanut butter. I had just met you. You could have asked. I panicked. You wrote yourself a reminder. I know. He folded the receipt carefully. I'm keeping this. Why? It's proof we were disasters from day one. I smiled. Fair point. Later that evening, we decided to take one last walk around campus. Not because we had to, because we wanted to remember it. We visited the library, where we'd survived countless Alight study sessions. The student center, where we'd first eaten lunch together. The basketball court, where I'd watched Cole play more games than I could count. Eventually, we reached the freshman residence hall, the place where we'd first met. Cole stopped outside the entrance. Remember orientation? I laughed. Barely. I remember everything. You do? You looked completely lost. I was completely lost. You asked me where Building C was. I remember that now. I almost walked past you. You almost did. He nodded. I was late. What made you stop? He smiled. You looked like you were trying very hard not to panic. I probably was. I figured I could spare 30 seconds. I looked at the building. It's weird. What is? If you'd been 30 seconds later, we never would have met. I nodded. Or at least not like that. He stood quietly beside me. You know what? I've been thinking about that dating app. I laughed. Of course you have. No, seriously, what about it? It wasn't actually the thing that brought us together. I looked at him. It just forced us to admit something we'd already been feeling. He was right. The app hadn't created our relationship. It had simply removed the fear. Everything else had already been there. The friendship, the trust, the late-night conversations, the quiet moments that had slowly become something more. I think you're right, I said. He smiled. For once. Oh, don't get used to it. The morning of graduation arrived bright and warm. Our apartment was unusually quiet. Cole adjusted his graduation gown in the hallway mirror. Does this hat look stupid? Every graduation hat looks stupid. Good answer. What about mine? He turned toward me. You look... He smiled like the guy I accidentally matched with. I laughed. You've been waiting to use that line. Then suddenly, it was over. Just like that. We stood outside afterwards, surrounded by classmates taking pictures. Holden ran over first. There they are. He wrapped both of us in an enthusiastic hug. You guys actually survived college. Barely, Cole said. Ren joined us a moment later. We need a group photo. Within minutes, everyone from our friend group was gathered together. Someone handed a phone to a passing family. Smile. The camera clicked several times. Looking around at everyone laughing together, I realized how lucky we'd been. Not just because Cole and I had found each other, because we'd built a life here, friendships that mattered, memories we'd carry long after university ended. That evening, after celebrating with everyone, Cole and I returned to the apartment for the first time all day. It was quiet. Beckett of us spoke immediately. Instead, we stepped onto the small balcony overlooking the street. The city glowed under the setting sun. Cole rested his arms on the railing. So, I laughed, you'll never stop starting sentences like that. Nope, I've accepted it. He looked over at me. Can I ask one last question? You can ask anything? He smiled. If you could go back to before we matched, he nodded, would you change anything? I thought about it carefully. Part of me wished we'd confessed sooner, saved ourselves months of wondering, but another part knew those months mattered. They'd built the friendship that made everything else possible. I smiled. No. I'd still move into that apartment. I'd still become your roommate. I'd still accidentally swipe right. Cole laughed softly. I don't think it was an accident. Maybe not. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Opening the dating app one last time, he showed me our original conversation. The very first message still sat there. Well, this is probably the weirdest way we've ever talked. I smiled. You were right, I was. It was weird. The best kind. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. You know what's funny? What? People keep asking how we met. I laughed. What do we tell them? He grinned. The truth, that we were university roommates. And I smiled. That we accidentally matched on a dating app? He nodded. It's a pretty good story. It really is. Standing there beside him, watching the last light fade over the city where our next chapter was about to begin, I realized something. Sometimes the biggest moments in your life don't start with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes they start with one accidental swipe, a shared apartment, and the courage to finally stop pretending. And looking back now, I wouldn't change a single part of our story. A month after graduation, life finally started to feel real. No more lectures, no more deadlines every other day, no more rushing across campus because one class ended 5 minutes before the next one started. Instead, there were alarm clocks, office buildings, morning commutes, and coworkers who somehow remembered everyone's coffee order after 2 days. Cole started his job before I did. Every morning he'd be standing in the kitchen at 7 o'clock, still half asleep, trying to make coffee without actually opening both eyes. You know, I said one Tuesday, you're terrible at mornings. He looked at me over his mug. And yet, you keep making coffee for me. I like surviving. He laughed. I appreciate your sacrifice. Some things had changed. Most hadn't. We still argued over whose turn it was to buy groceries. We still watched terrible movies on Friday nights. We still ordered pizza whenever neither of us wanted to cook. The biggest difference was that neither of us had to pretend anymore. If Cole leaned against my shoulder while we watched television, nobody was hiding. If we walked through the city together after work, we didn't worry about what people might assume. Life became simple. And after everything we'd put ourselves through, simple felt pretty amazing. One Saturday afternoon, Holden invited us to a barbecue. Almost everyone from university showed up. Ren, a few people from Cole's basketball team, classmates I'd spent years studying beside. It felt like a mini reunion. You two still living together? Someone asked while we stood near the grill. Cole smiled. Yeah. How's that working out? I glanced at him. He glanced at me. Then we both laughed. Pretty well, Cole answered. Holden nearly dropped his drink. That's the understatement of the century. Everyone looked at him. What? He grinned. I've been waiting months to say this. Oh no, Cole muttered. I told you idiots back at the apartment that everyone already knew. A few people frowned. Knew what? Ren burst out laughing before either of us could answer. You seriously didn't notice? One of Cole's teammates blinked. Notice what? She pointed between us. These two. The realization spread around the circle, one face at a time. Hold on. No way. Seriously? Cole scratched the back of his neck. So surprise. For about 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Then everyone started talking at once. I knew it. I'm actually shocked it took this long. You guys were literally inseparable. I thought you'd been dating for... I covered my face with one hand. This is embarrassing. Cole laughed beside me. A little. Holden looked unbearably pleased with himself. I've never been so right. You've been waiting to say that forever, haven't you? I asked. Absolutely. Later that evening, after everyone headed home, Cole and I walked back toward our apartment. The summer air was warm, and the streets were quieter than usual. You know, Cole said, I don't think I've stopped smiling all day. I noticed you. Same. He looked over. Can I tell you something? Always. I almost unmatched you. I stopped walking. What? The night we matched. You what? He laughed sheepishly. I panicked. You never told me that? I thought. He shrugged. Maybe you'd matched by accident. I stared at him. Cole, what? I thought the exact same thing. He blinked. Seriously? I actually considered pretending I'd never seen the match. He laughed so hard he had to stop walking. We really would have ruined our own lives. We came surprisingly close. He nodded. Good thing neither of us did. That night, while cleaning out another drawer in the apartment, I found my old student ID. Behind it sat a folded screenshot I'd printed months earlier. Our dating app match. I'd forgotten I'd printed it. Cole walked into the room carrying laundry. What's that? I held it up. He started laughing immediately. You printed it? I don't know why, you absolute nerd. I was happy. His smile softened. So was I. He set the laundry basket down before sitting beside me on the floor. For a few moments, we simply looked at the tiny screenshot. The date, the bright, "It's a match" banner, the beginning of everything. I still think it's funny, I said. What? Out of every person on that app, I matched with my roommate. Cole bumped my shoulder. Best algorithm ever. I'll give it that. He looked at me with the same quiet smile I'd first noticed in that hiking photo, the one that had made me stop scrolling. You know what my favorite part is? He asked. What? People always assume the dating app is why we're together. It isn't. No, he shook his head. It just gave us the push we needed. The real story started long before that. Freshman orientation, the apartment, late-night study sessions, coffee, grocery shopping, the flu, the blue sweater. I laughed. You still remember the sweater? I'm never letting you forget it. A few weeks later, we decided to take one last walk through campus before summer classes began. The university was quieter now. The paths that had once been crowded were almost empty. We wandered past the library, the student center, the river where we sat after our first date. Eventually, we reached the residence hall where we'd met 4 years earlier. Cole stopped beside the entrance. This is it, the beginning. He nodded. You asked me where Building C was and you were almost late. I was. I'm glad you stopped. He smiled. I'm glad you asked. Standing there, I realized how strange life could be. I'd moved into university expecting a degree. I left with a career, friends I'd never forget, and the person I wanted beside me for whatever came next. Not because of one lucky swipe, but because every ordinary day before that had quietly built something neither of us had been brave enough to name. Sometimes people ask us how we met. Cole always grins before answering. We were university roommates. Then he looks at me, and one day I finish the sentence every time. We accidentally matched on a dating app. People usually laugh. They think that's the whole story, but we know better. The match wasn't the beginning. It was simply the moment two people finally stopped pretending they hadn't been finding their way to each other all along.